Hey there, before we start, Aaron Harvey here. I just want to say that this episode had some technical difficulties, so if the sound isn't quite up to snuff, we apologize. Coconut!
Captain's log, stardate 7403.6.
Are you pretending to do a captain's log?
I saw that, but I don't believe it. A Vendorian doctor.
Shapeshifter? Boo. Look, I can set you up with somebody great on the Cerritos. There's that Philosian and Tactical. She seems like a nice plant person.
Intelligent plants?
Orion's little game of neutrality and piracy is over.
For your information, many Orions haven't been pirates for over 5 years!
Time to take this puppy off its leash! Warp me!
Welcome to Drawn to Trek. I am here with my lovely co-host, Jessie Gender.
Oh, wow, that you introduced me immediately. It's unlike me,
Yes,
who let you sit in silence for like a full 10 minutes.
Well, it's one of those, like we want to make sure that we're being economic with our words and everything.
Well, see, I like go through the whole ring. It's like, Drawn to Trek, we're going to be talking about this,
Yes, well, I'm going to do that.
You just sit there. No, I know you do. I just make you sit there very quietly and silently.
But nobody knows that if they can't see me, so that's I'm fine with that. When it's video and you're supposed to be seen, kind of like, what's going on?
I just stare at you often. You just like stare at me. I was like very patient. It's just very fun. But now then I see if you want to introduce me, I just derail you immediately from your entire thing.
That was going to say, like, we joked, I think it was the last episode, that with Saturday Night Live doesn't know how to end skits, but I don't know how to end podcasts either, because we have like 5 endings. If I go to, sometimes I'll edit 3 of them out, still have a couple endings. But yeah, so now our intro has just become that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
See, that's what you do when you get me. Anyways, you want to finish this off?
Sure. We are going to be reviewing Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 7, Where Pleasant Fountains Lie.
Yes, and you were saying before we started the podcast, you knew what that title was a reference to, and I had no idea.
It's like basically because we've I haven't done it, but they've had improvised Shakespeare at Impro Theater, so I've seen bits and pieces of things laying around. So this was a narrative poem from Shakespeare. It's not a sonnet, and it's not like one of his plays. So it's just
they're getting extra poem. Pretentious for this one, yeah.
But it's very, it's like the sexy, like if you assigned it in high school, it'd be like, people would be laughing about like, ooh. So the quote where this comes from is, graze on my lips and if those hills be dry, stray lower where the pleasant fountains lie. Yeah. So it's,
someone in the writer's room was like, whoa, I'm going to be dirty. It's very good. Very good. So, it reminds me of back when like my English teacher had to like skirt.
That's from Venus and Adonis, by the way. That's the poem. No. I just remembered.
It reminds me of my English teacher in high school who like had to skirt around telling us what the opening of Romeo and Juliet was about when they were talking about like heads on the we'll put their heads to the wall, and I'm like, and he's like my school wasn't allowed to talk about sex, but he's like, well. It was like one of those things, and it was absolutely hysterical.
That's great. So this episode has a lot to do with at least one part of it has a lot to do with sex or the lack of sex.
It's the Boy Miller Mariner section. It's all about the sex,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they crash on a planet, and it's just sex until the show's over.
Over. But also we get Jeffrey Combs back to start.
Yes, I'm so excited. Jeffrey Combs his voice is so distinctive, but it's also so Star Trek, which is great. And he actually, we can go through. We'll kind of break it down into the different sections. But he plays the evil computer. The show opens up, and we're helping these people who have had 100 years war because they basically trusted the computer, and the computer told them to fight. And I love Captain Freeman's like, well, at least you didn't say it was like supernatural. It's like, you didn't fall for that. And he's like, yeah, we never fell for that. It's like, clearly in their past, they had something like that.
Yeah, there's just a giant mural of it. That was really great.
And if you look at the murder drones that he has, they look a lot like the drones from the season 1 TNG episode, Arsenal of Freedom.
Which one was that one? I actually don't remember that.
It's the one where they had the planet where it was selling you all these automatic weapons and stuff. And so,
right, where they all get trapped down there.
Yeah.
And like right? Is it Riker gets trapped in the cave or whatever? Yeah.
No, I think Dr. Crusher's in the cave, or Picard's in the cave. Yeah,
someone's in the
one
cave.
Of them.
All I remember that.
Riker is like talking with his first officer, and said he says, I'm now serving on the USS Lollipop or something like that. It's like, so he realizes it's a computer, and then he basically kirks it to like trick it into
it's like if this is a lie, then that whole thing. It's
been a while since I've seen it, so I'm my my description might be a little.
It's season 1 TNG is
unless you're doing a comprehensive rewatch, it's not one that you never really necessarily just go back and jump into for fun.
Yeah. Well, I do watch the Sexy Planet where they murder you if you step on the wrong piece of grass all the time. That's a classic.
And it's funny because that's in LA, so it's just like if I go there, step on it. Yep.
Yeah.
That was actually the joke when we went and did a photo shoot just with our uniforms there, and we were treated like royalty. It was so weird because so few people. I guess this was in 2017, so Discovery had just started, there was no real Star Trek presence on television. But we used to have buses of people come in uniforms, and nobody comes anymore. And so we had random people pulling us aside and taking photos with us, like we were a prop almost. It was very funny.
That's kind of.
And then we were like, can we stand over on this? Because he was going to take our picture, the maintenance guy, and he's like, yeah, you can stand, and we're not even going to kill you if you stand on the grass over there. So I'm like, he clearly had the reference. So that was a lot of fun.
That sounds great. But so Evil Computer, Jeffrey.
Yes, Evil Computer. Yes. So they basically, he's a little box, and they're taking him back to the Daystrom Institute.
It looks like a desktop computer. Like what I got right here next to me.
Like a gaming computer, a really cool gaming computer.
Exactly, yeah. I want to actually, you know what? That would actually be a fun, like I wish they could do like computer, you can get like one of the cases, the computer cases like that. It'd be kind of fun.
Well, and at the end we have a bunch of options that we can talk about.
Yeah, it's like being in a Best Buy or whatever.
So basically we are now, Beckett is tasked with taking the computer back to the Daystrom Institute. Boimler was excited to go on this mission where he's going to be shooting giant centipedes.
Come on, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's wet work. Yeah, that was great. And so Beckett's like, oh, you've been reassigned. You're going to be the ship. Because I can spray down the cases that we have to load, and then you can have your wet work.
It was my favorite line though was like, it was work and it was wet. What do you want?
Exactly. So he gets reassigned to take this computer back to the Daystrom Institute. But these are both ensigns. Would they give just 2 ensigns a shuttle and say, okay, go back to Earth? Like, that feels like that's not. Does that work?
I could weirdly buy it just because, number one, this feels like an everyday routine-y kind of thing. It's like, we got another evil computer, which is kind of how they're playing it. So it's like, let the ensigns deal with the evil computer. And then number 2, I guess they know that like Mariner is fairly competent as an ensign. They know that. Like,
yes, that's true.
She may be irreverent and a jerk, but she can get stuff done and handle herself, I think, is the other fit too. And we've also seen throughout like TNG, like in Deep Space Nine, where people were just like, we just took a vacation to Earth for the weekend, whatever, on a shuttle. It's like the universe is a hell of a lot smaller than it actually seems to be sometimes on the show. So it is kind of funny in that sense. So
yeah.
So I could buy it.
Yeah, that's true. So basically, they get in the shuttle and they take off. We also have basically this beautiful kind of Baroque spaceship pulls up to it is
the animators knocked it out of the park. That one's like, damn, that might be the most beautiful ship I've seen in Star Trek. That is gorgeous.
It was done so well. It's funny because it feels really ornate, but it also feels very functional.
Yeah, exactly. They do continue. Well, we'll get there. But
Yeah.
it feels like that on the inside as well as the outside. It's like strangely works for like being a fantasy style ship in sci-fi. Yeah,
definitely. So we go to the bridge. Carol is talking to this queen. What is her last name? The Queen of Hesperia. I can't remember her.
Princess Laxwana.
Well, that's just it. It was like, so Carol Freeman's just like, oh, hi, what can we do for you? And just clearly these people have met before. She's like really just not thrilled that she's there. It's like, oh, I'm having a bit of spot of trouble. My ship isn't working and I need the skills of your chief engineer. And so we have yes. So Billups comes on and it's just like, hello, mother. Like, so we have our own Loxana now. It's just like, it's so
clearly playing Laxana. For the listeners who don't know, Laxana Troy being the mother of Deanna Troy over on Star Trek Next Generation, who would always kind of come on and want to boink Picard or Odo, or as it were, and just she had
a healthy sexual drive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shaming. I'm not shaming. No. She's fine. I'm great for her to have that. And what I also liked about her is that she eventually did become like more depthful as the series went on.
Yes.
Like, with the relationship with Alexander. Actually, some of the stuff she got with Odo was actually pretty strong. But regardless, and Rachel Barrett always played it to perfection. Yes,
and one of the most recent novels actually has a bunch of behind the scenes with her, which is really nice too.
Yeah, it's a good novel. I forget the name of it. It's the one with the Worf on the cover.
Yeah,
I forget the name. Yeah. But good book. Anywho, so we have our own Laxwana on the show, Billups' mother, which is great also too, because we haven't gotten a lot. I even said this in my review of season 1, is like I kind of had enough of each of the bridge crew members to kind of get them, whereas Billups, I never really felt like I had a good handle
exactly
on.
Yeah, no, definitely. Want to just go through the Billups storyline, and then we'll come back to the Mariner plot line, and I think the kind of in between is where we get the bridge crew a little bit, but not terribly. So basically, you cut to engineering, and he's kind of giving everybody a speech, like, okay, the routine. My mother's here. It's like she's gonna try and trick me into having sex, which the way it's phrased, you're like, sex with her? Like, what's happening? It was very weird.
In Rutherford's like, what?
Yeah. And so basically, we learn a little bit about his homeland, Hesperia, which is a planet that was settled by faire types, as Rutherford put it, and everybody lives in castles, and they have pet dragons and eat mutton. So
I mean, I would live on that planet. Like, come on.
Well, it's got to be better than the Scottish one with the candle.
Yeah, I mean, like if anyone says like this doesn't make sense, Star Trek canon, I'm like, there was a planet just full of like just Irish stereotypes that had sex with a space candle. So what do you?
Yeah. And if you've ever watched TAS, there are dragons, lots of dragons all over the universe. So
those like weird things with the springs.
The plant ones.
Yeah.
Phylos. Yeah. So no, I think we're totally fine on the believability within this world.
And so we also learned that the whole thing with Billups' mother is that she wants to trick Billups into having sex, because if he ever has sex, he has to come back and take the throne of Hesperia. So that's the whole kind of thing here. Also, I should say with this, because this is something that like I had a friend who watched this episode as well, and we were talking about it. It's like, did you find that problematic at all? Because I'm like, I could see there being someone who would take issue with like the whole trick into sex thing, but it works for me in this show, because in this episode, because number one, the show doesn't say it's a good thing. I mean, it does kind of make light of that as like ha ha ha, but it never says like that it's necessarily a good thing. And number two, we never really like learn the specifics of what she tried to do. So it could have just been like she kept trying to set him up on dates and stuff. So the darkness of that is kind of left up to your imagination, and so I don't particularly find it too problematic. I could see it becoming problematic in the future, being like, but just something to mention, because I know I feel like some people watching the show might be like, rub me the wrong way a little bit. But for me, I thought it was fine. So
that I could see people having an issue with that, but also we have a murderous computer that they're making fun of, who probably killed millions of people. Yeah, and he's a sidekick essentially. So you have to.
Yeah, I know some people's lines for sex and violence are different, because one is so abstract, whereas one is like deeply personal and body related. So
right.
I without drawing a line for anyone else, for me it works. So
Yeah. So the Queen Hesperia is there, and she's basically saying that there's something wrong with the ship, and it sounds like I'm not going to try to trick you into having sex. It's like I'm here to get your skills as a engineer. She's just got like this shuddering, like I don't even want to say it. So because their ship is having some sort of weird issue where like I deal with the impulse drive is I can't remember exactly. They said a couple different things.
Technobabble stuff things.
Basically, yeah. And so they grabs Rutherford as his second in command, basically, to go and help. And Rutherford is really freaked out about this. He's very nervous. He's like, this is a fancy ship with like lords, and like I don't know what to do. And Tandy,
comfort zone sort of thing.
Yeah. It's like I don't want to be out of my comfort zone. I like my zone. It's comfortable.
Exactly.
Which was great. But Tandy basically is like, hey, this is a great opportunity for you, and she basically talks him into going, but then also totally freaks him out by saying, well, mate, remember to do this and make sure you learn to curtsy. So he's just then totally kind of just super
freaking
out. Yeah.
And then next they go over to the ship, and there's some really good bits where they like see my favorite bit of this is the tube that connects the two ships.
Oh,
has
yes.
like torch sconces and everything, and it's like looks like the things that they did in Star Trek Discovery in the season 2 finale when they sort of like had the tubes connecting the ships, but it's just done in a very fantasy style.
Right.
And that's continued when they actually go over to the ship, and you see like they have a guy who's playing a lute, and they just have all these like different princesses and stuff going around. It was again, animators did a phenomenal job of like making a sci-fi ship feel very fantasy-esque, and it worked very, very well.
Giant portraits when you first entered of all the family, and Billups as a child and stuff like that with this.
Exactly. Yeah,
that was great. So they start saying it's like he sends Rutherford over to check the dragon's blood matrix or whatever, or dragon's blood, whatever it was.
Some fantasy terms for
and so it's like Hysperians have all renamed everything to sound like magic, and so you got Rutherford over there, and he goes and he takes his tricorder, and he's like, the elf matrix seems to no, don't do that. So he's like, the dilithium matrix. That was great.
Yep.
I love that.
And I liked this whole bit, like you could really this whole thing, like Billups actually fixes the ship and everything, and you see that he really does care about engineering, and that's like is his thing. It does kind of get into a stereotype stuff that I'll talk about a little bit later when we get to that point. But I think it is it's a nice development for his character to like flesh him out in that way.
Yeah, I think this is continuing the theme this year of like, oh, we've seen this kind of thing in other shows before, but it's subverting it slightly or doing something deeper with it or new. Yeah, that has been a nice surprise, and not just like because when this starts happening, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of know what's going to happen, but then you don't necessarily. So it's
exactly, which is nice, and so it kind of just shows like his mother is just like, hey, no, you did great. I'm like actually really surprised that you were able to like do this. And now I understand why you are an engineer and don't want to have sex. And she's like, oh yeah, I think I finally showed her and everything.
And then Carol basically says, I need you on the ship, and Carol, like I'm calling her by her first name.
It's Carol,
yeah. Captain Freeman basically summons him back to her ready room, and he's like, "You needed me, Captain? No, not really, but I thought maybe you need an out because your mom." And then he explains that no, like I think I actually have maybe gained her respect.
And then there's a huge
the ship explodes behind them. Yeah, like a big hole. I love how because they framed it. It's one of those almost like the Scooby-Doo has the different colored door that that somehow they're going to go through. It was like that ship is really, really visible in the middle of like, okay. Yeah. So we get this explosion. And
supposedly killing Rutherford, and
we learned this really quickly because we cut to Tendi and Dr. Ta'ana. And, she says that there's been an explosion. She's like, oh, should I prepare for casualties? And she's like, just hands her the pad that shows very quickly that he's been killed.
And she freaks out.
Yeah, she's having flashbacks to what had happened before. So there's just,
And very visceral. Like, it was just a very visceral moment. They played it like very straight, which was kind of dark.
Yeah, and just the way she just pounded on the window and just, it was...
The way they played it for a moment, like I knew he was probably not dead, but for a moment I was like, "Wow, dang, all right,
It reminded me very much of Data's death in The Most Toys.
Yeah. Where they like everyone, or the other one too with Jordy and
Ro.
Their death.
Yes.
Their death. Like that was also
The
pretty
next
dark,
phase.
too. Yeah. So yeah, it was like pretty serious.
She basically is. It's almost like she doesn't quite want to accept it. So she asked the computer where he is. Like, I don't know what she expected.
I think what she asked was where is his implant still on, and I think her plan was to just go and collect it so she still had a piece of him.
Oh yes,
as opposed to like finding like him still alive or something like that.
But when she does get there, he is alive inside of her room having a feast.
Exactly, just having a very nice feast with some mutton and stuff. It's great.
Well, one thing that we have forgotten in between before this happens, Billups basically comes and puts down his Starfleet badge and says that, my people need me now because the Queen's dead and I have to go
be a leader now.
But yeah.
So he's gonna get laid.
Yep, he's got to do the royal copulation.
Yeah, and then after that, Tendi and Rutherford sort of like learn about this and realize that this is all a trick by Billups' mother to try and get him to have sex to make him come back and become king. So Rutherford and Tendi, well, just Rutherford, start to run through the ship to try and stop Billups from having sex. There's a couple like really great, like the lute actually like stops communication.
Oh yeah, like a psycho, like a psionic, not psionic, whatever I'm trying to say, like comm blocking lute. Like using sound waves to block the comms.
Anyway, it stops communications, which was great. And so Rutherford's like running through the ship, and we're cutting to Billups.
We did have one good line before, which she's like, "You will never catch him." It's like, "My guards have been trained since birth to skip foreplay."
Yes, yeah, that was good. That was really, really good. Which I'm like, skipping foreplay, like, come on, that's the best part. It's the best part. Anyway, so Rutherford's running through the ship. And trying to decide we're getting cuts to Billups like having sex, which by the way is nice to note that there's a guy and a girl there, so it's a nice little subtle like or at least presenting guy and girl people. So it's like, oh nice, bisexual, or at least not caring what gender of a person is. So which is nice. And so running through the ship, and my favorite
get on
thing
my way,
is,
horse.
Exactly. My favorite line though is when Rutherford bursts into the room. He says, "Has his kingdom come yet?" Which is some writer was so pleased, and I'm very pleased with him because that was excellent.
There was a lot of very clever entendres or double entendres in this episode.
And then we just learned that apparently Billups just couldn't get it up, which I found interesting for a few different reasons. Because number one, I mean, obviously Billups didn't have sex, so he didn't get tricked into sex or whatever. But it is interesting because the way that I read this, and this is again as someone who is not part of this community and is also, this is not explicit, so this is definitely not explicit representation. But what I found interesting about this is like I sort of read this as a sexual representation of like Billups being either sex neutral or sex negative or sex repulsed as asexual. Because he was sex positive, not to say that he would necessarily have gotten it up. Because again, there's a spectrum of asexuality, but it would appear that he's either sex neutral, sex repulsed, or sex negative as an asexual person, which is actually really cool because you don't really see a lot of asexual representation there and TV really at all. And while again, this number one isn't explicit, so I don't know if this was the intention of the show or if this is the direction they're going to go. So it still could be that he doesn't mind sex, he just is kind of nervous or whatever. So there's other ways, but I just read it that way, and it would be cool to see that. And if they do go that way, there is some sort of stereotyping of like, oh, his love of engineering is like sex for him, which is a bit of a stereotype and things like that. But that also being said, I kind of hope they do lean in that direction because we do need more asexual representation. And I think there's some ways they could do to make sure to do it better and do it clearly. But I think if they head in that direction, I think that would be a cool idea. So,
yeah. So basically, he's saved. We still have our engineer.
His kingdom didn't come.
No, it did not.
Yeah, I did like though the little bit at the end with Tendi sort of saying, "It's like, oh, I guess I'll just have to get used to you almost dying all the time." And others like, "Yep, I'm gonna do it." And you get this little scene with Tendi being like, clearly bothered by this.
Not okay with that. Yeah, because his thing is, well, yeah, it's Starfleet, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're definitely building up the Rutherford Tendy relationship again. Which, to be fair, what I will say about this is I find it adorable, and I like this episode. I like that whole bit. And this isn't a negative at all, but I do hope that they start to, will they or won't they, like, confirm one way or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they'll will they at some point, but I don't want them to like be batting this back and forth for too much longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I think that would. I don't think that would fit the way that they've been writing things either. They're gonna. That'll have to be revealed at some point. They did start it in season 1, but not as heavily as in season 2.
Yeah, well, and even in season 1, though, it was like just one-sided on Rutherford's side to a degree, at least on the romantic angle. And then Tendy sort of has been feeling it the other way now. And so with Rutherford not really reciprocating it as much in a romantic sense. So I'm sure they're going to like meet in the middle at some point. So it'll be interesting to see. I like I said, it's not a negative because I liked how it worked here. It's just one of those, like, I can see myself if this drags out too much longer. Then I would get frustrated with it, but we'll see. We still have a few more episodes. So.
Yep. Well, I think we can go back now to the
rewind
Boimler Beckett thing. Yeah. Well, this works pretty well. I think we've tried to go back and forth between like literally following the plot, and it's
easier to just to ping pong.
Yeah.
To just pick one and stick with it out.
But
yeah. This one I loved, except for we'll get to it at the end. I have one major critique of this storyline, but otherwise I love this Jeffrey Combs Mariner Boimler storyline. I think it was great.
So they're flying back to the Daystrom Institute, and of course they hit a gravimetric shear in a planet. They crash into the season 2 poster, basically. It's like all the elements from that poster are there. It's this planet that has obviously trapped a lot of other ships at some point have crashed there. It's just
this is City Alpha 5.
Basically. It felt very much like that, which is obviously what the poster is supposed to also be alluding to. So they crash on the planet. She has her shoulder like all out of whack, and it's like, oh, it's just a fracture, and he's like, oh no, I don't even want to look at it. She just pops it back into place, and the only thing that's working is the replicator. So they kind of yes. So ask for a glass of water. It makes
black licorice black, which is worse than death in my opinion.
I love black licorice, but I don't want that to be the only thing that I can eat.
You're one of those people. Ugh,
well, actually, I like black jelly beans. Black licorice, I do not like.
Oh, that's even worse. The black jelly, you like have it like up because you use black licorice, so you like can prepare for it as it's like coming at you. But like the black jelly bean, like there's a whole jar of multicolored things. You're just kind of gonna reach in and enjoy this sugary goodness, and you put it in your mouth and like you just taste the one black one. Like I'd rather have like that Harry Potter vomit flavored jelly bean over the black jelly bean. Yeah, I'm sorry. I
like fennel, so I guess that must be exactly. Fennel has kind of an anise taste to it, so I think it's like that has sort of it's a gentle slope into going into licorice, but
you've slowly been indoctrinated into the black licorice lifestyle.
It's the only way that I've also for cilantro have been able to, because I'm one of those people who's just like it tastes like soap or metal or something. It's just like I don't want it. But because I live in California, basically when you say no cilantro, that's like just less cilantro. So it's like so I've kind of over time realized that I actually put it in something once. I'm just like, whoa, I don't know what's happening to me. Who am I anymore? So.
Wonderful.
Yes.
But yeah, no, this whole bit is great. The black licorice black is just
dry too. Aaron from the future. Just want to let you know that Mike McMahon, the person who created the show, likes black licorice. So I feel like I'm vindicated.
But this whole time, apparently, the Jeffrey Combs computer...
Agamus.
Yes, is... I'm just going to call him Jeffrey Combs computer. Is just trying to trick them into... Very overtly and obviously trick them into, like just plug me into the computer.
You know what I like to do when I'm scared? I like to be connected to a computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's great. But then he manages, while they're distracted after being attacked by like a weird monster thing.
Yeah, it takes all their actual rations.
He manages to connect to a pad, and
personal access data device.
A pad, and And I think that's clearly how you say it.
Yes.
And is able to download some information, which will come up in just a little bit. But
Yeah.
because they run out of food, Mariner and Boimler start heading out into the wilderness to try and find some food.
Because if there's creatures there, then there must be water somewhere.
Mm-hmm. But what's interesting here is and it was already started back on the ship. Is we're starting to get a little bit of an interesting conflict between the two, between Mariner and Boimler, in that Mariner is clearly like kind of perturbed that Boimler is independent from her.
Yes.
She's like saying, you can't do this, you can't handle this, you're not commander enough, and like actually meaning and kind of belittling him. But what we know as someone, we've seen Boimler's growth this entire season, especially like last episode where we were so like just showing that he has grown so much on his own as a leader. And he has gotten to that. And so we know that he doesn't necessarily need Mariner as a mentor, still as a friend, but as like a Chadich mentor.
Yeah.
Doesn't really need her in that capacity anymore. And you can kind of see that it's coming out of Mariner kind of trying to claw him back and being resentful of the fact that she is not needing him, which I think is a great character development for her. It doesn't make me like her. It makes me kind of frustrated and angry at her, but makes perfect sense based on what we saw in like episode 3 of this season, where she actually said to Tendi, "Is like, I get worried when people abandon me and I want them." So it's sort of like her being possessive because she feels like she needs people. So I think it makes perfect sense out of her character. It's a frustrating thing, but it fits her character development, character growth. And so I thought that was really cool. So I ranted for a whole bunch there, but I just wanted
to... every time that he mentions the Titan, just her ratcheted up reaction is funny, but it is also, I feel like it's everybody has a friend who mentions something. Probably less our friends with Star Trek, like, don't mention Star Trek anymore. But yeah, just the fact that it's just like, enough with the Titan. Like, I don't want to hear about your extracurricular activities or whatever.
It's like it was a whole promotion.
Yeah, she did act it. She definitely belittled it, and every time she talks about it, she minimizes it as if it was just a fluke or something that just wasn't as much as it actually was. And
in the process minimizes Boimler as well, and like minimizes saying his capabilities, which again just goes against what we've just seen in his character growth as a person this whole season, really. And I love that. I think that this was a great butting to heads of these two characters in terms of like where they both are in their arcs.
And you even get a butting of heads of like, she just wants to bury the computer and like go and Boimler's like, no, it's a sentient being somehow. They know that, and that like basically straps him on when they go to look for food, takes him with him. She's like, stupid Starfleet ethics. Like,
hey, Data fought for the rights of computer beings, so of course. Yeah. But then, of course, they something happens, and they, like, he just says something cruel, and marry him at the moment because he's trying to instigate a fight between the two of them.
Oh no, it was guacamole. It was they go to they find the tree and they and they knock down the fruit, and it turns out that it tastes exactly like black licorice. They drink it anyway because they need the liquid. And he's like, just think, if you would let me go tap into the computer, you could be eating cheeseburgers or milkshakes. Or she's like, don't say it. Guacamole. And then you just see them getting buried. Like, right. Yeah. So they fall asleep, and in the middle of the night, all of a sudden you hear, help, help, and like these little crabs are carrying Agamus away. Yeah, which was apparently Mike's like loves the cute little crabs. He's like, that's my favorite part. Like,
really?
Okay,
that's adorable. But yeah, they gets carried away by the crabs, and Boimler saves him. But then Jeffrey Combs' computer shows him that Mariner was the one that actually got him reassigned, and actually went up to Ransom and said, hey. This is, he's not ready, and lied to Ransom so that Boimler couldn't go, kind of stymieing his career a little bit. Yeah. Which actively made me angry at Mariner. I'm laying down the foundations for what makes me upset about this episode. But I will say again, this is good. I like this. It fits her character, and it is something awful that she did, and it makes me angry at her. And I make sense. And while she initially denies it, a few scenes down the road, she basically confirms that this is something she actually did.
Part of me wanted it to be like just a fake recreation that Agamus had manufactured. Because also last week we had Tendi getting everybody signed up to do the anomaly consolidation day without telling them. Now we've got this. It's just like I'm not loving the fact that they're all kind of doing something behind everybody's back. But
well, at least Tendy's was more like not negated. Like she wasn't getting them off of anything, and it was like intended to be like a nice kind thing.
That's
she
true.
just was didn't reveal that it was her.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like duplicitous, whereas this is actively duplicitous.
Yeah.
So I can see I hear your point that it is sort of like a lot of behind each other's back.
Maybe it's just because it just happened last week. It's just sort of like it's just like, oh, okay, it's another one of those things.
Yeah. I think the intention's different. Like Tendy was trying to be kind, whereas Mariner's trying to be possessive,
bossy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think honestly it comes across as like possessiveness. Really, she needs Boimler to need her.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so basically, Boimler says screw it, heads off without her, and is going to take the computer and hook him up to this like alien ship that's there. And Mariner comes after him and fights him. And they get into a whole fight, sort of like, again, seemingly because Jeffrey Combs' computer instigated it.
Yes. And he's sitting over in the corner going, yes, like very excited about it. Yeah.
Which is all great. And it's building up to this whole bit. I kind of called what was going to happen, but it works and it fits their character arc. And so Boimler beats her and shoots her with the phaser.
Yeah. She's like, you wouldn't dare. And then he dares.
he does. He doth dares.
Yes.
And then they go in, connect him to the computer, and then Jeffrey's computer starts going over the top. It's like, yes, you've fallen for my evil, and like we get this whole thing.
My murder drones will take over. Yeah.
It's freaking great.
It's like, and you fell for it.
Yep. And then Boimler just like, nah, I didn't fall for it. Nah, nope. Turns out he just like was using him so he could like charge the like signal, and that he had only connected him to the dimmer switch.
Yes. It's like, the navigation's way over there. All you control is the dimmer switch.
That's my favorite. My favorite line of the whole episode is like, "I will blind you," and he just like flips the switch.
Click, click. That was so good.
That would have me rolling on the floor.
And I love the fact that like when we saw that little bit, I was like, oh, I hope this isn't like a 5-minute evil computer scene. And the fact that it was so short, it was just like, and then he's like, you've been boimed. That was great.
Yep. And so then they get rescued and they drop the computer off at the Daystrom Institute, which looks just like the Daystrom Institute from Picard, which is kind of nice. I like that little bit of continuity.
Yeah.
They must have just taken it and animated a shot from the show. And then we drop the computer off, and there's a wonderful bit where the computer's like, I'll join Starfleet, I'll be good. But then they just crop it off.
It's like I've deleted all my evil subroutines. I realize that goodness is the way. They're like, yeah, we're not buying that.
And then it's just like a bunch of other evil computers, and there is a good little like button in the episode.
The self-aware megalomaniacal I can't say that.
But you leave this in the edit. You do not.
I will not take this out. It's self-aware megalomaniacal. Whatever, computer storage. Megalomaniacal. Thank you. Yes, that's. Yeah. It's been a day, and I'm surprised I recognized who you were. I mean,
yes. I'm right there with you. Don't worry. So I've kind of been alluding to it, but I need to kind of rant just a bit here.
Okay.
This is my one negative, and on my actual review of my channel, I probably harped on this a little bit too much because, like I've been saying, I liked this whole plot for Mariner. It makes sense for her to be possessive, to be controlling of Boimler, and all this jazz. My one big negative of the show is that it comes across as Boimler kind of forgiving her pretty easily at the end, because it's revealed, like, yes, there's the whole fight between them, but Boimler ultimately reveals that he was just playing that up for the computer's benefit, and that when he says you've been boimed, he like fist bumps Mariner, and it was like all seems good, and there's not really any addressing of it honestly and openly, that Mariner kind of fucked up his chance to like have a career, like a nice little thing on his career. It kind of hurt his career a little bit there.
Yeah.
And not just like, oh, we missed out a mission. Like she told his direct superior that he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ransom was like, oh, I thought he was ready. And so like it's something that will.
Why you actually took Mariner's view, like word for it, I don't know. That's on Jack, honestly. But
that is on Jack. But still, it is something that's like this. Again, it makes sense. I'm not knocking this progression for her character.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking that it doesn't make sense in terms of where she is. And I'm not saying that characters that I like can't make bad choices.
Right.
What I am saying is that Boimler not calling her out explicitly on it and them being cool at the end kind of bugged me, because it felt like a bigger deal that Boimler should have been like, no, we're not cool. I would have honestly much preferred the episode to end like them rescued and getting off. They even if they do the fist bump, it's like, hey, we still trust each other. But him just kind of being like, no, we're not cool after that right now, and just having even a little line that's just like we're still friends or whatever, but like not cool. And I'm gonna be a little bit upset about it for a little bit. Like I just feel it just felt weird that they were kind of cool with each other at the end of this,
especially because they had the reconciliation that they had at the Starbase party. Mm-hmm. Like that feels like that shouldn't have happened after this. It's like it's like, wait a second, come on, you've had an understanding. It felt like, and you clearly have not forgiven him for going to the Titan, even though you've had the whole "I've forgiven you."
See,
or something.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. That episode could have come after this, and it would have fit the arc fine. But I feel like I I could understand how they're two separate things, because he did abandon her. In without telling her. That kind of triggers like a lot of like she has abandonment issues clearly. It is a thing, and so I could see her wanting to deal with that. But now she still kind of has those possessive tendencies within her. And so I can see this still being an ongoing issue with her, of her wanting to be possessive of Boimler. I just don't like that the show didn't call her out on it, because I think it's a negative for both Boimler and for Mariner's character growth going forward, that sort of doesn't get aside. And I will say too that it does kind of like Boimler is getting a clear arc, like a clear positive arc this season, that I can kind of read as like he is coming into his own as a commander and finding out what type of leader he is. Like it's not just like, hey, I want to be the Titan. Like the first part of the season is like, I don't want to be in the Titans. Like I want to be the Enterprise D commander. And then we're starting to see him being actually taking up that type of role as a leader throughout the rest of the season. And I'm loving Boimler's arc really well this season. Mariner's arc seems to be on a negative arc, which is fine. It's okay to take a character down a darker path, but it's less clear and less defined for me. Like the beginning of the season started to seem to show like she was also about finding her type as a commander, where she's like in episode, what was it, 2 with Kay-Shan episode, where they go and like she's kind of like having it out with the other guy.
Kay-Shan when he became a puppet.
Exactly. It feels like that was meant to be like a start of an arc for her figuring out her leadership style. Yeah. And then the rest of this has been more like most of her moments have been sort of bouncing off of her inability to like either emotionally attach to other people like Tendi, or her possessiveness with Boimler, which again are fine character arcs to go on. I'm not knocking the arc. It's just less clearly defined as Boimler's is, which is kind of sad considering that Mariner's arc was the most defined in season 1. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. So.
Well, maybe we will see that resolve, or at least come into a little bit more focus as we move forward through the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's just something I've noticed that I'm just like, that's the one that everyone else, like Tendi, Rutherford, Boimler, have fairly clear arcs, where Mariner seems to be a little less. I'm not necessarily connecting the dots of her character arc and seeing where it's kind of heading in a satisfying way.
Yeah. One really quick way. I didn't do a lot of. There were not. Well, there might be more Easter eggs than I'd seen, but one thing that I just loved at the very end when we're going through the self-aware megalomaniacal, and I'm never going to say it, so I'm not going to say it.
Megalomaniacal.
Megalomaniacal.
I can't say
I can read it and I can hear it in my head, but for some reason my mouth is not making the sounds. The computer storage area, when they zoom out, which is very much like the Borg alcove kind of scene, but you have all these different, basically 100-year-old router is what Mariner called him. He's like, rude. That's great. But as they're pulling out, there's all these different computers, and they have different sort of faces on the front, different glowing things, and there's one that looks like it has a cross, like a no symbol. But if you look to the left of the Jeffrey Combs computer, 2 or 3 over, there's the CBS eye on one of them, and that was made me laugh so hard.
That's a good one. That's like a Simpsons-esque kind of like Big Fox sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, well, it is. It's a creepy eye if you think of it, in
is.
that way. It's like
It
so
is
it works really well for.
I mean,
there's a
eyes,
couple.
eyes as logos just generally are creepy. Yeah.
There's a couple that have like, they have the way they've arranged some hexagons looks like two eyes and a mouth, and so they've done a really cool job of making these all sort of look semi-anthropomorphic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was kind of nice. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was fun. I love that. So I overall I actually enjoyed this episode.
I really like I said, other than my one critique of just it's something that's like it's one of those like could have been fixed with just a little bit of a change at the end, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Other than that one major criticism with Mariner, I loved this episode. That was great. I
want the ship from Eagle Moss, the Monavine. Mm-hmm. So yeah, get
on that Eagle Moss. Make yourself some money.
I'm sure somebody. Yeah. Well, and what's great is this also now brings in fantasy role-playing cosplay into Star Trek. Mm-hmm. So we can
not that we needed that much.
Exactly. But still, now we've got something canonical that we can sort of bring in.
Yeah. Well, all civilian clothing honestly looked like they were part of a Ren fair at this point in Star Trek anyways. Like anything, like go watch any like TNG episode and everyone looks like they're in a freaking Ren fair if they're a civilian.
No. Oh, especially like with the Mintakan, the Proto-Vulcan people. That felt very, very Ren fair.
Don't even get me started on that nonsense. It's the Proto-Vulcan is like the same thing as like the different Earth, like the duplicate Earth thing from TOS, in my opinion. But
they're Proto-Remans. Vulcans.
Yeah, exactly. Proto-Remans. It's very different culture. But yeah, no, that was I oh my god, so many thoughts on that. But anyways, that's a whole different argument and discussion.
Yes.
But yeah, ultimately, I like the episode.
Yeah, me too. So I think that pretty much wraps things up. Do you want to let the audience know where they can find you when you're not in this little square?
No.
Okay.
I don't want them to
All
find me.
Live long and prosper.
Yes. No, you can find me at Jesse Gender on the YouTubes, where I do video essays and things about LGBTQ and social issues through geekdoms and pop culture. I also have a secondary channel called Jesse Gender After Dark, where I do news and reviews sort of things. CBS recently reclaimed our reaction to the trailer, by the way.
Again?
So, yeah, it's not up anymore.
I never actually went and watched it the first time.
Yeah, it went up for a little bit and then they reclaimed it again, so that's gone. But if you want other reactions and things like that, those are up there.
It's just my face. They're just like, no.
Yes, like no. We don't want this associated with Star Trek. No. But no. I also have another podcast called What the Frell, which is a Farscape rewatch podcast that I do with Council of Geeks, the wonderful Vera Wild,
awesome.
Another fellow YouTuber, and I have a Patreon that you can support me at doing all this way too many things. And I also have social medias, mainly Twitter, where I'll be ranting away about either trans rights or Star Trek, one of the two.
What ifs? That was today. Yeah. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. I thought I was enjoying reading some people's what ifs.
I used to like, what if Odo became the Grand Nagus?
I mean, it'd be fascinating. I don't know how you get there.
Yeah,
but it'd be fascinating.
Well, he could look like a Ferengi.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just be impersonate Quark.
I also liked Zek as the head of security on Deep Space Nine, because that would just be like, there would just be so much contraband and stuff going through that station.
Yep. I'm surprised they never did do this storyline with Odo impersonating one of the cast members. I don't think they ever, not that I can think of, I don't think they ever did an episode like that. I'm surprised they never went that route. That feels like an easy route to have gone down.
Yeah. Maybe they made the decision not to do that. Maybe that's part of the Bible somewhere. It's like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking Odo having to impersonate Quark would have been that
would have been hilarious.
That would have been great. Like Armin Shimmerman having to pull off an Odo would have been a good time.
Yeah, Odo trying to be Quark but Armin Shimmerman. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
I feel like they spend enough time together that it could work pretty well.
Yeah, it would remind me of the episode where Jerry Ryan had to be the Doctor, which is also a great
that
episode.
Was really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And if you want to find me online, I'm on Twitter as well, Geek Filter, Instagram, and I'm doing some design stuff, and I've got some things coming up in a while that I can't talk about quite yet, but you'll be able to find me in places other than on the computer.
I know. I'm very excited for you. It's very cool.
Thank you. I am hoping that all of these schedules don't collide into one. Like, so the next 3 weeks I can't sleep or something, which probably is what'll happen because that's life.
It's capitalism.
It's
fine.
capital. Yeah. It's capitalism from Japan in my case right now, which is another level of frustration. So
yeah, I can imagine. But yeah. So yeah.
All right.
It's great.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. And if you get a chance, leave a review and ratings in iTunes. We are still somewhat new on the network, and that helps people find us.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Well, live long and prosper, everyone.
Live long and prosper.
Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute!